My name is Jim Mercer. I am 70 years old and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. And I want to talk to you today about something that happened to me on the 4th of July in 2023. I want to talk about it because every year on the anniversary of that day I sit on my back porch in the evening and I listen to the neighbors setting off fireworks, and I think about the fact that I almost was not here for it. And then I think about where I was instead, and I am grateful in a way I cannot fully express, even though I am a man who has talked to strangers about important things for 35 years. I sold insurance for State Farm from 1978 until 2013. I want you to understand what that job actually is, because it has bearing on this story. Selling life insurance is not what people think it is. It is not about commissions and cold calls. At least, it was not for me. Selling life insurance is sitting down with a family, usually after something has gone wrong, or they are afraid something will go wrong, and asking them to look directly at the thing they are most afraid of looking at, and then making a plan. I sat with thousands of families over 35 years. I sat with people who had just lost a spouse and did not know how the mortgage would be paid. I sat with young parents who could not sleep at night because they kept thinking about what would happen to their children if something happened to them. I sat with men and women in their 60s and 70s who were finally, after a lifetime of putting it off, willing to have the conversation. What I am saying is, I was not afraid of death as a concept. I had been discussing it in kitchens across the greater Nashville area for 3.5 decades. I had helped families prepare for it. I had sat with the grief that follows it. I was professionally comfortable with mortality in a way that most people never become. What I was not prepared for was the experience of it, specifically the experience of 10 minutes on the other side. Here is how it happened. My wife Barbara and I were hosting a 4th of July cookout. Our son Craig and his wife Donna and our 3 grandchildren had driven down from Louisville. Our daughter Patty and her husband were coming from Brentwood. We had too much food, which is the only way to host a holiday in our family. I was grilling, which is my domain, and I was fine, and then I was not fine. I want to tell you something about those insurance conversations, because I think it is relevant to what I am about to describe. The moment in any life insurance conversation that I found most significant was not when the client signed the policy. It was earlier than that. It was the moment when they stopped deflecting and started actually thinking about the question, when they went from nervous jokes to real stillness. I called it the honest moment. Some people reached it in 10 minutes. Some people never reached it. The ones who did had a quality afterward, a clarity, a kind of settled seriousness about how they were spending their days that I noticed every time. I had spent 35 years facilitating that honest moment in other people. It took a heart attack in my own driveway on the 4th of July for me to fully inhabit it myself. The chest pressure started around 2 in the afternoon. I know what you are thinking. Why did I not call someone immediately? I will tell you why. I had had reflux for 20 years. I had had pulled muscles from lifting 2 heavy coolers. I had been cautious about crying wolf at a holiday cookout with grandchildren running around. I took 2 antacids and sat down in the lawn chair and waited for it to pass. It did not pass. By 2:30 I had pain radiating down my left arm. By that point even I could not rationalize it. Barbara saw my face and called 911 without asking my opinion. The paramedics arrived in 7 minutes. My left anterior descending artery, the one cardiologists call the widowmaker, and they call it that for a reason, was 98% blocked. My heart stopped in the ambulance on the way to Vanderbilt University Medical Center. For 9 minutes and 51 seconds, I was somewhere else. Now, I am a Methodist. I have been going to Methodist services my whole life, the same church Barbara and I have attended since we were married in 1978. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. I have sung the hymns and said the prayers and raised my children in the faith, and none of that is changed by what I experienced. But what I experienced was bigger than any of the hymns, bigger than any of the prayers, not contradicting them, building on them the way a real place builds on a description you have read in a book. I had been given a map. On July 4, 2023, I traveled to the territory. I left my body in the ambulance. I looked down and I saw myself, and I saw the two paramedics working on me, and I heard one of them, a young woman, could not have been 30 years old, counting compressions, and I thought, she is doing a good job. Then I thought, I am dead. And then, almost immediately, I am not afraid. That absence of fear is the first thing I want to tell you. If you are afraid of death, your own or someone you love, I want you to hear this clearly. On the other side of the flat line, there is no fear. It is gone. It does not migrate with you. Fear is a feature of the body, and I had left the body. What was left was just me, without the freight. I moved, and I use that word loosely, because I was not exactly moving so much as arriving, into something I am going to call heaven, because I was raised Methodist and that is the word I have. I acknowledge that word comes with its own architecture in most people's minds. I am asking you to set that architecture aside for a moment, because what I found was different from any Sunday school picture I ever saw, and also more real than any of them. There were no gates. There were no clouds in the way pictures show clouds. What there was, and I am going to reach for the most honest description I can, knowing it is inadequate, was the feeling of being home. Not my specific house on Belmont Boulevard, not any house I had ever lived in. The feeling of being home in the most essential sense of the word. The sense that this is where I came from and this is where I belong, and I have been away for a long time. The light was, I keep coming back to light, and every person who has had this experience seems to, and I think it is because there is genuinely no other word. The light was warm and personal and completely without shadow. Not metaphorically without shadow, actually without shadow. Everything was equally illuminated from every direction, the way things look in a perfect photograph but never in real life. And the people. My mother was there. Patsy Mercer, née Wallace, died in 2001 of congestive heart failure. She looked the way she looked in the photographs from before I was born, young and strong, and with the particular brightness in her face that the years in the small house in Murfreesboro had somewhat dimmed. She was not dimmed at all. She saw me and she laughed, not the small, careful laugh of her last years, but the full laugh that I remembered from when I was 8 years old and she was 30, and we were still living the simple version of our lives. My best friend from childhood, Eddie Greer, was there. Eddie died in Vietnam in 1969. He was 19 years old, and I was the one who told his mother. I had carried that, telling his mother, for over 50 years. I did not know I was still carrying it until I saw Eddie standing there at 22 or 23, the age he would have been if he had come home, and something I had been holding for 54 years let go. Eddie looked at me and said, these were actual words, not impressions, actual words in Eddie's specific voice from Nashville, Tennessee. He said, Jim, you did everything right. You have always done everything right. And then he laughed and said, even if your golf game could use some work. That was Eddie, exactly Eddie, right down to the bad joke in the middle of the profound moment. I want to describe what heaven looked like because I think this is what you came here for, and I want to be fair to it. There were no buildings in the way we have buildings. There was, and this is going to sound unusual, there was landscape. Not like Tennessee landscape, not like anything I had seen before, but recognizably something like landscape. Depth and space and color and distance. But the color was wrong in the best possible way. Oversaturated, vivid beyond what human eyes normally process. Like the difference between an old photograph and something in full high definition. There was music. Not music I could identify, not hymns or country or anything in any genre I knew. Something that was to music what the light was to ordinary light, the source of the thing rather than the thing itself. And there was peace. I have used that word in insurance conversations for 35 years, usually to describe what a well-structured financial plan provides for a family. I did not know what the word meant until July 4, 2023. Peace is not the absence of trouble. Peace is the presence of something so large and so stable that trouble cannot find purchase on it. That is what heaven felt like from the inside. I was shown things in those 10 minutes. Not everything. I understood that clearly. A 10-minute visit does not get you the full tour. But I was shown enough. I was shown that the people I had spent my career helping families prepare for losing, that those people were not lost. That the policies I had sold and the conversations I had facilitated and the families I had helped look at the hardest thing they were facing, all of it had been right. Not because it provides financial security, though it does that too, but because in sitting with families and asking them to acknowledge that this life has an end, I had been doing something true. There were things I saw that I am still finding language for. I saw, and I understand how this sounds, and I am going to say it anyway. I saw what I can only describe as the fabric of connection between living people. A web, but not metaphorical. An actual visible structure from that vantage point. The love between people who are still alive, Barbara and me, Craig and his family, Patty and hers, the grandchildren and each other. It was present there as something visible. I could see it. All of the love that exists right now, right here, between the people who are alive and the people who have gone ahead. It was all visible from that vantage point as one continuous structure. Nothing cut off. Nothing ended, just love extending in every direction, in every dimension, with no edges I could find. I looked at my own connections in that structure, and I was surprised by what I saw. The families I had sat with over 35 years, the widows, the young parents, the retirees planning for a future they hoped would be peaceful. Many of those connections were still there, visible as threads of something that the conversation had established between us. The honest moment I described, it had left a mark, not on the policy, on the actual structure of things. Acknowledging that this life has an end is the beginning of living it correctly. I came back to the hospital in a way I can only describe as arriving reluctantly. Not because I was unhappy to be alive, because where I had just been was so much itself, so fully real in a way that made everything else feel provisional, that returning was an adjustment. Barbara was in the waiting room at Vanderbilt. She had been there for 2 hours. She is not a woman who cries in public, but when Dr. Williams came and told her I was awake and asking for her, she cried in the corridor, which is the only time in 45 years of marriage that I have seen her do that. She came into my room and held my face in both her hands, and looked at me the way she has been looking at me since we were 19 years old. I said, "Barbara, I need to tell you something." She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I am better than okay. I am better than I have ever been. And your mother says hello." Barbara's mother, Evelyn, had died in 2017. They had been very close. Barbara sat down on the edge of my bed and I told her everything. My mother, Eddie, the light, the music, the feeling of being completely known and completely loved. I told her what it looked like. I told her what it felt like. She did not doubt any of it. Barbara is a practical woman who does not have patience for what she calls nonsense, and she did not treat this as nonsense. She said, "Of course." And then she said, "Of course Mama was there." My grandchildren came to visit the following Sunday. Craig and Donna drove down from Louisville with all 3 kids, Tommy, who is 9, Sarah, who is 7, and little May, who is 4, and who refers to me exclusively as Grandpa Jim, in a tone that implies she is checking whether I am still there every time she says it. May climbed into my lap on the couch and put her hand on my chest over my heart, the way small children do, and she said, "Grandpa Jim, your heart is beating." I said, "Yes, it is, May." She nodded, satisfied. She leaned back against me. We watched whatever cartoon she had brought with her on the tablet. I thought about the web I had seen from heaven, the threads of connection that had been visible from that vantage point. The one between May and me was there, visible, real. She did not know she could see it, but she could feel it, which is why she put her hand on my chest. 4 years old, checking whether the connection was still intact. It was. It is. Whatever happens to the body, whatever the cardiologist says at the next appointment, that thread is real, and it is part of something that does not end. I have been home from Vanderbilt for almost a year and a half now. I have a stent in my LAD, and I take 4 medications every morning, and I walk 2 miles every day, which Dr. Williams prescribed, and which I do religiously, because I have reasons to stay here that I did not have before. One of them is the work of telling this story. Because I spent 35 years in insurance sitting across from people who were afraid of death, and I was helping them prepare for it financially, but I did not have anything to give them about the thing itself, about what is actually on the other side of the flat line. Now I do. I want to tell you what I know, from 9 minutes and 51 seconds in that place. Let me be specific about the fear I lost, because I have heard people say they lost their fear of death after a near-death experience, and I understand that can sound like a statement made from the comfortable distance of having come back. I want to tell you what it actually feels like from the inside. Before July 4, 2023, I had a specific fear about death that I had never fully articulated even to myself. It was not the fear of pain. I am an insurance agent. I had processed that fear into a rider and a policy years ago. It was the fear of discontinuity, of the specific texture of my own consciousness, my memories, my preferences, my way of noticing things, the specific frequency of my attention, simply stopping, ceasing to be the shape it had been for 70 years. After what I saw, I do not have that fear. Not because I was told everything would be fine in a vague and unconvincing way, but because I saw continuity in operation. My mother was continuous. Eddie was continuous. Every person I saw was a continuous version of who they had been here, not a copy or a projection, but the actual same person, in a state where everything accidental or limiting had fallen away and everything essential remained. The shape does not stop. It continues. It just continues somewhere else. Heaven is real. I do not mean this as a religious statement, though I am a religious man. I mean it as an observational report. The place is real. The people in it are real. They are not memories. They are not projections of your grief. They are themselves, fully, specifically, irreducibly themselves, in a place that is more real than this one, the way an original painting is more real than a photograph of it. Everyone I lost is there. Your mother is there. Your husband is there. Your wife is there. The child you lost, who you cannot think about without being broken. They are all there. They are not waiting in darkness or silence. They are in the most beautiful light you can imagine, and they know you are coming, and they are glad. The only thing that breaks my heart is this. They watch. They are aware of us. They see us grieving them, and they cannot get through to tell us, we are all right. We are better than all right. Do not be afraid. I was given 10 minutes there, and I came back so I could say it instead. If this has helped you today, if it has given you peace about someone you have lost, or quieted some of the fear about your own end, please share it with someone else who needs to hear it. The link is right below this video. I want to close with what I said to Barbara when she asked me what the most important thing I saw was. I thought about it for a long time. The light, the music, the landscape, my mother laughing her full laugh, Eddie making his joke, all of it. And what I told her was this. The most important thing I saw was that love does not stop. Not at death, not at any distance, not at any barrier. Every single person I saw in that place was still connected to the people they had left behind, with a love that was not diminished by the distance. If anything, it was cleaner there, cleaner and more visible, without the noise of ordinary life to interfere. We are never truly separated. The body separates. The love does not. I believe that, not on faith, though my faith supports it. I believe it on experience. I was there. I felt it. And every 4th of July evening when I sit on my back porch and listen to the fireworks, I think of my mother and Eddie and Evelyn and all the others, in that light, on the other side of the thinnest possible membrane between here and there, and I am, every single time, at peace.